Welcome back to the Female Dating Strategy, the meanest female-only dating podcast on the internet. I'm your host, Diana.
And I am Rose. And today we're talking about the big V. That's right. We're talking about vulnerability. Now, if your mind went somewhere else, that's on you, girl.
That's a you problem.
That's a you problem. Here at FDS, the big V, the most important V of all, is always going to be vulnerability. How much do we have? How much should we share? And all of the sort of attendant risks that come with it. And this is something that in our pre-talk, Diana and I were just going over this. There's so many different environments where you have to sort of take these risks, calculated or otherwise, with it's professional, romantic, etc. But something we ourselves have been grappling with since we started the podcast is how much do we share with you, the listener?
And I think that that's part of the struggle because I think we always knew, as did anybody who's going to listen to this podcast, that we are not going to be like the past hosts. And that's just because we're different people. That's common sense. You know what I mean? It's we were never going to do it the way that they did it. So if people were expecting that it was just going to be an extension, they were always going to be left disappointed because we're different people with different life experiences, and we're of a different age. We've had different sorts of careers. We've lived in different spaces. So I think with a podcast like this, what really helped with the previous podcast is I always had a sense of their background, but their unique experiences was what actually added value for me. If it was just going to be generic dating advice, I don't think that I would have latched on. I think part of this podcast is the experience, the experience of listening to this podcast, not just the experiences of the women, but also just going beyond just the dating and also talking about how this affects real life. Because I think when we look at everything from a strategy perspective, one of the downsides, I always think about how the red pill is so choreographed, right? It's every guy thinks that he's going to walk in a situation with women behaving in a similar sort of script, and everything they answer is to that script. But in real life, as you probably know, it's not that scripted. The way that people interact with each other is sometimes really sneaky. It's very hard to want to believe the worst of someone when you've been told from a really young age to not think of people that way. And so if you were raised in a sort of Pollyanna-ish, believe the best and look at the best in people, it's very easy to be taken for a ride because you don't want to see that people can have sinister intentions, and that's the thing, we can only provide so much strategy as makes sense. You have to apply it to your own lives because there's never going to be a script. Yes, a lot of men behave in similar ways. That's a pattern identification thing. You can definitely spot patterns, but to assume that every single man has the exact same line, the way they execute that strategy and the way they manipulate you might be slightly different.
This is so true. And this is such a good point, Diana, because as somebody who was brought up by the golden rule and the Catholic do unto others, blah, 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 I did have a very Pollyanna-ish attitude, and I still do. But I went from the Pollyanna-ish upbringing to deep cynicism and despair. And then I was like, you know what? I got to find a happy medium. I don't want to be despairing of every person I encounter, but I also don't want my Pollyanna-ish nature to constantly be taken advantage of. And I've been very pleased at how I forged a middle path where I'm still able to be authentically myself while also having my eye towards the various, rationales and justifications and backgrounds people might be coming into the situation with, right? So I think this is such a good point. With having our own backgrounds, I do love how we're always the east meets west. We're the sun and the moon. Remember our signs?
We're fire and ice.
Fire and ice, right? We were such good complementarian people. And I love that we can be both honest about who we are, at the same time understanding, it's not going to apply to everybody, nor should it have to. But for people who are listening here, like you say, part of the journey is simply the unveiling of the hosts as we get to know them over time.
Yeah, and we're navigating that as well because it's we were talking about this in another chat, I think, where we were talking about how everything has become so parasocial and how people think they know you just based on hearing a podcast every week. And it's yes, sometimes your brain is full of the internet and you need to be able to be honest with yourself and know when that is, okay? If your brain is full of the internet, you need to get out and interact with people because even on this podcast, we're very strategic about what we disclose with you. Everything I say is not 100% honest to my experiences, BT dubs, because, I've been very sneaky on this podcast, just FYI, because it's common sense to be. It's common sense to be. You know what I mean? We have private lives. We are entitled to those private lives. And so it goes to show that, when you meet a stranger, because again, when we're dealing with an online audience, we don't really know who's engaging with us. But when I meet someone face to face for the first time, you have a living, breathing person in front of you now. And like, it's normal of you to not want to assume that they're sinister just based on meeting them. Like, I don't go into the world and navigate with men assuming that they're going to be Ted Bundy. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think that's a healthy way to live either, right? But that being said, the reason we have a strategy is because it's supposed to be living, it's supposed to be mobile, it's supposed to be flexible, it's supposed to be something that's applicable in a lot of situations where if you do enough pattern recognition, you can identify the threat. Like, we're not going to give you a script of like, this is exactly what he's going to say and this is how you respond, because the truth is that men are smarter than that. I hate to say it, but like, they're sophisticated in their manipulation because they can be. They're not all going to be like saying the same shit to you. Generally, yes, it will sound somewhat the same, but like, to assume that there aren't going to be newfangled ways that they get one up on us is just like laughable. You know what I mean?
It's very naive. It's very naive.
Yeah, it's very naive. And like, that's not how people operate. And also, that's the thing, right? If you are a person who's very empathetic and a person is like, it's very easy to engage you based on your empathy, based on like you feeling sorry for people, you're going to get manipulated a lot by people, not just men, because people can see that.
Hi, I'm raising my hand. I'm raising my hand real high right now, Diana, because that's exactly what happened. It wasn't just men. In fact, I think the hardest part for me was how often it happened with what I assumed were friends, because this is not gender exclusive. This is human encompassing, because, everybody has their sort of own agendas, and some people are very happy being the villain in your life story. And some people just, are so hurt, the whole hurt people sort of thing, that camp, that, they can't think of you as somebody who bears recognizing as a fellow fragile human being, right? You're just a means to an end. And so I like that you bring this up again. This is not a script. We're not following a red pill formula. And I think that's why it has been so enticing to so many women, because that's what we all are realizing here. It's like, we have all hoped for and been taught for so long that men are XYZ and women are sort of the Prometheus of the world. We hold everything on our shoulders, but yet we're not in charge of anything. How does that make sense? So I think we're coming to terms, and the internet has been helpful with this. We're coming to terms with just like how diabolical the male project has been as concerns women. And of course, like with the last week, as we've seen in the United States, it's such a bunch of fuckery over here. And it's like very obvious that women are the linchpin upon which this whole machinery is based, right? And anytime we start to deviate from the conventional path, we are endangering the status quo of patriarchy and capitalism, late stage capitalism. So think about this as like our freedom ride. Okay, this is our freedom. This is our ride to freedom. This is our push towards equity.
That was the other thing. Like, there's just like another point I want to add here. Like, I think with the internet, like if you're here in the era of Tumblr and stuff, like we just live in oversharing age. I think a lot of people have gotten really used to pouring their hearts out on the internet. Ever since social media has become a mainstay of our lives, it's like what is appropriate and what isn't appropriate is like the lines are kind of blurred now. Because a lot of people will be like, yo, you're being too sneaky and cagey and like you're trying to be too mysterious if you don't share things. But at the same time, it's like, well, for example, like this is the difference between high trust and low trust societies, right? Like if you live in a low trust society, you are told not to share things with other people because other people will judge you. And so somebody who comes from a low trust society is not going to be very forthcoming with information. But someone who comes from a really high trust society, they're used to having community. And so they don't really think about like how things are going to negatively affect them. For example, like, if you grow up in a very low trust society and your family is like a shit show, the last thing you want is for people to know that your family is a shit show and like, the father's an alcoholic and the mother is divorced and stuff, because these are things that are going to not be advantageous to you and they're going to work against you. And so people learn to be cryptic and quiet about their personal tragedies and just like have like a facade of, function. In a situation where a high trust society where divorce is really normalized, that might not be something that people think that they need to hide up, so cover up. So it's like what we learn that's appropriate is also very culturally specific, I think. And so, that's the thing that you have to challenge when you meet men, because if you come from a high trust society where that doesn't seem like something strange to share, you'll just share it. But like, we have to talk about like, what is information that is appropriate to share with strangers? Because I think a lot of people assume that because you just started dating someone, it's like, well, I want our relationship to be one of trust and based on trust, which is, again, a very noble intention. But at the end of the day, you're still meeting a stranger. And so I think people think automatically that this is a very good way to bond. And like, if this person really loves me, then it should be okay that I share this really intimate and private detail with them. But like, again, the same safety strategy that would apply for a child being like stranger danger should be applicable here. Like stranger danger is applicable in dating.
If you're in a situation where you feel like you have to like open your veins and bleed out in front of them for them to feel like you're truly being authentic, that should already be a red flag. Nobody should be soliciting that kind of information in the early stages of getting to know each other. It should be like, what do you think? White chocolate or dark chocolate? Are you a cat or dog person? Like Chinese or Thai? You know, I'm not saying that you can't have honest and authentic conversations, but like there is no need for you, and nobody should be asking you about childhood trauma in the first few months of getting to know you. That's just inappropriate. And I love that you seized upon this word, inappropriate and appropriate, and high trust and low trust. I was absolutely 100% unequivocally inappropriate when I was coming out from my family home because I came from such dysfunction. And I was so desperate for validation, and I was so desperate to be seen and to connect. I thought that, you know, by sharing how awful my life was, people would also see how honest and noble that I was, how good-hearted I was. Some people did, and those were really meaningful friendships, but more people were just absolutely turned off and frightened away, and rightfully so. But it took me a very long time. In fact, it took me through many years of therapy for me to understand, like, that was inappropriate, Rose. They weren't acting in a rude manner. They were acting in an appropriate manner to somebody who they don't know, who's sharing things that never should be shared. At least not at that stage of getting to know someone. So listen, I'm not calling anybody out for something that I haven't had to learn how to call myself out on a million times over. But I think you're absolutely right. Stranger danger is more than applicable. It's more applicable in dating than it even is with situations with strangers, I would say.
Yeah, I also wanted to talk about another thing. Like, you know, we often talk about the communal sort of culture of Eastern cultures and like the individualistic culture of Western cultures. And one of the things I think that Western culture, I mean, of course, I'm speaking very broadly. Of course, this is not applicable to family, but like Western culture in general, children have more agency. Their privacy is more respected. So like they're allowed to answer questions without giving too many details. But when I was a child, like, growing up in an Eastern culture, children are seen as extensions of their families, like, and the family reputation is affected based on the actions of an individual person. So things that happen to you happen to the entire group. And so you grow up in a culture where you feel like you have to justify your decision making and the way that you think and feel about things. And I didn't realize until I was an adult just how much I felt like I needed to justify my actions to other people in a very strange way. Like with my friends, like I would over explain my decision making and my process. Like when I was at work, for example, and I needed to take time off of work, I'd be like, well, I'd have to come up with like an elaborate excuse, even if it wasn't true. And I remember like I had a friend sit me down and be like, you know, you don't have to tell me the blow. Like, I don't need to know. And it like until that point, I did not understand like why I did that. But it's because when you grow up in a culture where the expectation is that your actions affect everyone and like your agency and privacy as an individual is not looked at, you feel like you have to have a justified reason to explain your decision making.
I call this surveillance culture within the family.
Yeah. The way that that manifests in your relationships is like, again, I remember like in my early dating life, like I would feel like if I had like a okay date with a person, not even a bad date, just an okay date, like there was nothing I could cry home about, like there was nothing I could complain about. This person didn't mistreat me. This person wasn't rude to me, didn't nag me. Just it was just an okay date. Okay, there was no sparks, nothing. I still felt like I couldn't deny them and say, oh, I'm not going to have another date with you, because I was like, well, they didn't do anything wrong. And so in the interest of fairness, I need to subject myself to another date with this person, even though the lack of excitement should have been reason enough. But like, I didn't want to have the awkward conversation of having to justify my lack of interest. And so I was like, what's the harm? I'll just go on another one, even though I knew I didn't want to, because again, it's in the interest of fairness, right? So the thing is, I think that most women are culturally conditioned to act in a way that is unfair to them, but seems fair superficially to other people. And it comes back down to like people pleasing also, right? It's like, oh, I don't want to upset anyone. I think like the older I got, the more comfortable I got with upsetting people. There's two things I can compromise here. Either I can compromise my own sense of self-worth, dignity, and respect. I can compromise myself, or I can compromise my relationship with this person. And if me advocating for my own agency, for my own privacy, for my own individuality is going to be a threat to our relationship, it's now that I reach the stage where I can look at that and be like, well, maybe that's not a relationship I want to have.
That's absolutely a way for you to judge, you know, is this a person worth getting to know more? And I love this idea of like fake fairness. Well, actually, trying to be fairer to the other person than you are to yourself. And this is something where you said, like, I've become more comfortable with letting people, feel a certain way about me. I've become more comfortable understanding that however they feel about me is a them problem.
Yeah, you can't really control, like, because the thing is, I've even reached the stage of being extremely accommodating of other people, and it's still blown up in my face. And I was like, well, if I'm gonna piss off people anyway, I might as well just do what the fuck I want.
Boom. There it is. Again, I bring this back time and time again because it is the longest standing relationship of my life with my family. And that's why I said it's not that I enjoy or feel any sort of way about them being mad at me or feeling, whatever they feel about me. It's still hurtful for me to be the villain in my sister's story. It's not like I like that. I'm not really okay with it. However, that's not my problem. That is not on me. That is something she has to deal with and she has to grapple with. And so that's where I started to finally apply it in my own personal life. When I finally started to get those boundaries up and in place, that's when my life really started to improve radically for the better.
That's the thing, right? Like, advocating for your own agency, like, I mean, I don't even think this is culturally specific, because truth be told, most countries teach women to defy their own desires and like everybody else's requests instead. And it's like, I reached a point where I was sick of my life, like people coming and telling me that this person feels this way about your life choices and this person thinks this. And it's like, well, if we're taking everybody's opinions, let's go ask the fucking postman. Let's go ask the milkman what he feels about my relationships. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, why is this anybody's fucking business? It's not. Yes. It shouldn't be anybody's business. And so, like, yeah, like, I think this episode should really be like, whose business is it? Is it my business or your business? And I think, like, this is the thing that people forget when they start dating people. It's like, I want to have this emotionally intimate relationship with them. Should they not know everything about me? If I don't have this level of trust with them where I can share like the most deepest, darkest things that have happened to me, is it really love? And it's like, well, when you first meet someone, they're still a stranger. They haven't earned that right yet. And as a stranger, like, the thing is, you change the situation to any other stranger, like a friend that they met or a work colleague or an interview. And automatically the answer for that person is like, of course not. Of course I wouldn't share this information with someone I just met. But for whatever reason in the context of dating, it's like, but shouldn't we know everything about each other? And it's like, no,
not in the beginning. I love what you said. We teach women to deny our desires. Even if you do marry someone else, we can never fully know another person, and nor should we aspire to. Like, there are some things that are so deeply private and personal that none of us should ever have to share with others. We have the right to internal privacy, okay? I don't care if you marry somebody, like, I'm going to go to the fucking grave with, and I should be able to, and I shouldn't feel harassed or like I'm somehow unjustified in that decision. And I feel the same way about whatever man, if I ever do end up marrying a man. I don't need to know 100% everything about him. First of all, humans change. Like, we're not some static, statue. But also, like, I find it very odd that we're supposed to know everything. Like, that doesn't make sense to me. That's a totally modern concept that has never existed at any time in antiquity.
Also, do you ever really know people? Like, for me, at the end of the day, it's like, I believe in being a creature of mystery. Like, I am totally a gossip girl on this front. It's like, that's a secret I'll never tell. You love me, XOXO, gossip girl. Like, you're not going to know everything. And it's like, I believe in not telling them everything. And like, there are certain things I remember reading on FDS early on where I was like, yes, I totally agree with this. And like, yes, it makes total sense. And like, for me, the hard line stances are, I don't share anything about personal family traumas or sexual assault or anything like that, like with men. Thankfully, I haven't experienced anything too drastic on that front, but I would not, even if I did. You know what I mean? Like, I would not. And it's just because I've seen too many situations where women have told men about specific traumas and triggers only to have men weaponize those traumas and triggers against them when the time was right. So maybe initially they didn't do that and they seemed very accommodating and understanding. And they're like, I'm so sorry you went through that. But because they knew that was a specific trigger or trauma for that person, it was very easy to manipulate them.
It becomes weaponized against them. And you don't know when that will happen. Remember how they're always like, you only know the person you married when you divorce them?
Yeah.
I think that's the approach you should have with whomever you're dating. You only know the public side of their face right now. Who they are really in their heart of hearts, you will only find when you've upset them, disappointed them, etc.
Yep. And this is why we had the blood in the water test, because, I mean, for those of you who don't remember what this was, the blood in the water test is to basically like feed them like a insecurity that you don't have. For me, for example, it's my nose. I love my nose. Like my nose is like my dad's nose. I'm like, well, this is like an inheritance. But I always say, oh, I'm so insecure about my nose because it's like too big or whatever. It's perfectly fine. But I just say this bullshit. And I'm like, oh, I've been thinking about having it done or whatever. And it's not true. None of it is true, mind you. But I wait to see whether they use that against me or not. And there have been situations where they have used that against me, and I take note of it. I take it under advisement because I'm like, you know what? I threw that intentionally to see whether you'd use it, and you did. I usually don't do something that's predictably something that most people like eyes or lips or whatever, because I'm like, well, these are features that people will call me out on, be like, oh, these are nice. So it can't be too fake, okay? If you have something that you're known for that every single woman wants, and then you're like, oh my God, I hate my whatever, my ass.
My pillowy lips.
Yeah, I hate my eye, my like long lashes. What a drag. You know what I mean? Like, you have to make it believable, first of all. You have to make the insecurity believable. I also think this is applicable to places like work and stuff. Like, I've been like a big proponent of not even telling places. I mean, of course, you know, with HR, it's hard to, because they know your address, but I don't make it a point to like inform my superiors about where I live. Because then if like we have like a snow day, or if we have like a day where I don't need to come into work, even if I'm like 5 minutes away, I can pretend like it's too far for me and I can stay at home. You can take that life hack. I do that a lot. Like, I try not to tell, I never tell them how many members of like the family exist in my household. My mom has given me full permission to use her as a dependent for everything. So I'm like, I have my frail mother to look after. Please give me more money. You can collude with your family to advance your paycheck, you know? So
Under late stage capitalism, anything and everything is permissible, as far as I'm concerned.
yeah, as far as money is concerned. But like, even in dating situations, right? Like, this is something I advise people who have like terrible relationships with their families. It's like, don't make that known.
Correct.
You know what I mean? Don't make that known to a person that you're dating. Like, it doesn't matter what beef, like how angry I am with my mom on that specific day. It's like, that shit I keep to myself. You know what I mean? Like, mostly the people I've dated know nothing about my family except that I have a very good relationship with them. I always talk about them favorably. I always talk about them, even if that was not the case. You know what I mean? Like, I advise people to do that because men pay attention for things like that. Like, you know, if you have a dead parent or if you have a negative relationship with like a male father figure, they assume you have daddy issues and they try to pull off the stunts on you. Like, you have to be careful with like what you share with people when you first meet them. Because again, like, lots of people are taking you in and trying to figure out your weaknesses.
This is why, you know, I'm one of four. I'm the youngest of four, but often people only ever hear about the one brother who's like, I call him the best of the worst among people who know me, because the other two are just like literally the worst. But he's the only one I refer to, one, because he's a brother. And we all know men oftentimes only respect other men. And to know that I have like a male in my corner, a successful male who's well regarded in the community, right? Like, who's in an honorable profession, who makes a lot of money, like, that's the kind of man that other men will respect. So I make it very clear that, like, we are very close, we've got a great relationship, we travel together, la 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 la. And then as far as my parents are concerned, I'm just like, oh yes, both my parents have passed away. And I never bring up like how the best thing my father ever did was die. Like, obviously I'm not going to say that to anybody I'm just getting to know. But those who do know me know that that's like one of my saying about my dad is like, the best thing he ever did for me was die. Like, even to my friends, they're like, oh my God, you know, it's such a radical statement. And it took me forever to actually acknowledge and then articulate out loud to somebody else, like to a very close friend, like, this is how much I hated this man, right? I'm glad he's dead. But you will never hear me saying that to anybody at work or in my, you know, romantic life, especially not in early days. I'm not saying that's not something that wouldn't come up once we're like deep into the weeds. But up front, that's just something that's very precious and personal information that hardly anyone should ever have access to.
Another thing I believe in lying about is like the quality of my relationships in the past. Like, as far as any new man is concerned, I've only ever been treated well. I don't know disrespect. Like, that's never happened to me. Disrespect, we don't know her. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter. Like, I always give them the impression that I've always been treated well. That way, when they treat me poorly, I'm like, oh my God.
What is this?
What is this, brother? You know, immediately no. Because it doesn't matter. Like, I think for most people, you know, if you have been treated poorly, it's like, you so want to prevent that from happening again. And so you offer this information up to be like, you know, because you're hoping that by offering this information, they'll be like, oh, this poor gentle thing, she's been treated so poorly, like, it's my duty to treat her well. But for most men, what that does for them is it lets them know where your bar is at. And they're like, as long as I'm above this bare minimum bar, she's going to think I'm amazing because I'm slightly better than the other one. I advise women not to settle. Like, again, you know what? You can take a lot from dating from just learning basic investment and negotiation, even in a business setting. Because even in a business setting, like, I have managed to double my wages so many times just by not being very forthcoming about what my previous wage was. When I give people the impression that I make a lot, they want to match the value that I bring. The value that you bring is being determined by that person at that point. If you tell them that, hey, my standard, my value in the past has been low, and like low in the sense of like it doesn't have to be abusive, but just like in general, negligent, not being thought of, like anniversaries forgotten, birthdays forgotten, like no romance. What they know is they just have to put a slightly above, like again, it reduces effort for them because it's like I just have to take this slightly above in order for this person to be happy with me. And you never want to sell yourself short in that department. So it's better to come in with the impression of I've always been treated well. Whether that's true or not is unimportant because it sets the standard for him that he's going to have to bring his A game or he stands a chance to lose you. Either way, whether that's true or not, if he doesn't sustain the energy throughout, if he's like, okay, well, she seems like she's high standards, but like maybe I can pull that off for like a couple of months and then when she's like comfortable, I can just like bring it down a notch. Like if you don't have the ability to walk away, it becomes redundant. You know what I mean? Like that's the thing with any negotiation, you have to have the ability to walk away. That was one of the biggest pieces of advice that my father told me. He's like, your best tool in a negotiation is your ability to walk away.
Diana's dad, the OG.
Yeah, I was like, when you can walk away, it means that you had better options.
I like that you talked about, when you tell people and you're negotiating, the way you earn more money is you say, well, at this job, these were my benefits. This was my salary wage. I just had this last week, Diana, which is why I had to jump in. So right now I work as an assistant to a very wealthy mother-daughter team, and they pay me very handsomely hourly, right? And my hours are minimal and the tasks are manageable and, they're mostly not micromanaging me. So all in all, it's an excellent job. But I'm always on the prowl for like better money, better benefits, anything that can like improve my life financially, because in this economy. But so this last week, I interviewed with somebody who lives in the wealthiest neighborhood in the city. It's one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in the country, as a matter of fact. And of course, he's like a hedge fund person. He's in finance, la, la, la. And when we were doing the negotiating, I was like, well, this is what I'm making at my current job, that I would like to make somewhere in the ballpark of that, if not more. And he was like, well, listen, in the finance world, what we do is we pay a slightly lower hourly wage or salary. And then we have semi-annual bonuses that are at least 20% what we're already paying you for that portion of time. Is that something you'd be open to? And I was like, that sounds manageable. That sounds reasonable. And he's like, and by the way, even if it didn't work out for us, let's say you were dismissed, before the 6 months were up, you would still be given that bonus as like, as a dispensation as we fired you. And I was like, oh, well, I would hope it wouldn't come to that. But like, that is also very reasonable. Like, that's very gracious, I think, as somebody who, who's been fired before or who's had people, like, oh, we want you to have this job, but actually we're not going to be able to afford to pay you more like we thought. I mean, in the past, I've just been through so many situations where I'm like, oh, okay. But now I have completely changed my mentality and I'm starting to get such amazing pay for like jobs that are minimal kinds of hours and responsibilities. You know what I'm saying? Like it has totally changed and shifted how I negotiate with people and how they view me.
Yeah. And I think that like one of the most underrated pieces of advice I got was from this actress. And I remember she told me, she was like, you need to stop networking vertically and start networking horizontally. And I think that's what's really helped me like leverage the connections I have to better paying jobs, because sometimes, when you walk away from a job, like, people have this statement of like, you don't leave a bad job, you leave a bad employer, like a bad boss. And like, sometimes you just can't bring the boss as a reference for like a new job, or like they just don't want to support you. But in those situations, I've always found that like, because I allied with key coworkers and they were willing to put in a good word for me, I was always able to elevate. And like, that's the thing, right? Like, it's worth it to actually, I mean, again, we've now come on to the business side of situations. But again, it's like, how much information is too much information? Because I think for a lot of people, they don't really know what the line is between being authentic and oversharing, right? Like at the end of the day, when you come to a company, a lot of people feel really guilty for things like, I think post-code people feel guilty for things like, I have a gap on my resume, I suddenly have to be a caregiver, I'm a single mom. It's like, how much of this should I disclose to my employer? And how much of it is necessary for them to know? And how much of it is like, it's none of their business? And the good thing is like in countries like the US, there are like protections, right? It's like there are certain things that they cannot ask you in an interview. But some countries, not only do they ask you that in the interview, they can use that as a way to discriminate against you because there are no workers' protections, right? So being able to decipher what is appropriate to share, what is being authentic and what is being oversharing, it's just like, what is oversharing? It's sometimes difficult to navigate because It's something that you have to apply to not just strangers you meet who could be potential friends or potential business partners. It's also relevant to your romantic relationships, right?
So then if this is the case, how do we find that line then, Diana? Like coming at it from an FDS strategy perspective, how do we start to draw that line and understand when it comes into play and understand when it can be slightly modified? I mean, let's think about this from like a practical application kind of view.
Well, the first thing I will say is that relationships are built over a period of time. At the time when you meet someone, that is not sufficient time. In FDS, we always say that you need to let the person reveal themselves to you. Because before 3 months, you have no idea who they are. And for whatever reason, that 3 month thing, I remember thinking when I first read it, I was like, this is such a strange frame of time. But weirdly enough, it's been applicable not just to relationships. I've seen that take place in like the workplace as well, where like I, was working at a place for 3 months, and within 3 months, like the manager or the boss had like an about face, and I was like, whoa, this was not the company I interviewed for, And like it's a big part of the reason that some companies have like 3 month probations or 2 month, like there's a reason they have a probation period. You know what I mean? Because it's the same thing. It's like ultimately when you're first meeting someone or dating someone, they're on probation.
Absolutely.
And when they're on probation, you don't share every last thing. Because I think a lot of people, again, misjudge it because they're like, well, I'm just trying to escalate and like speed up the process because if we can just be intimate and vulnerable with each other, we'll have a stronger bond.
There is no shortcut.
Yeah, you won't have a stronger bond. What you will have is codependency. You know what I mean? You won't have a stronger bond because that person has now found you hook, line, and sinker. They're like, this person needs me, and they're going to emotionally just dump on me. And as long as they do that, it's going to be easy for me to take control and manipulate them, And I think a lot of us learn, like, we feel guilt because maybe some of it is family induced. It's like, we put a point here about like, what happens if your family is not a safe place to be vulnerable? Well, what ends up happening sometimes is you end up being too vulnerable with people who don't deserve it.
Mm-hmm. So let's say, the first rule would be probationary period means minimal, if any, vulnerability.
Yep. Probation period, 3 months. I actually still think that's a valid thing. Like, I honestly think the 3 month rule is not crazy.
Yeah, the longer that I've thought about it and seen it in action, the more I'm like, it is absolutely 100% accurate.
Yeah. The 3 month thing is really true. I remember I once had a male colleague say, do you really even know anyone before a year? And I was like, wow, how profound for this guy to say.
So I was just going to say, right after 3 months, then there's like a 3 to 6 month, and then I would say a 6 to 12 months. So let's break down what 3 to 6 months might look like and what 6 to 12 months might look like and beyond. Because he's absolutely right. You absolutely do not know anybody for the first year.
Yeah, I think the first 3 months you have to remember that people are on their best behavior. So even if they think the shit that you're saying is weird, they're going to act like they're so super accommodating about it because they're like, well, I want to get laid.
Absolutely.
So much of like, that's why we advocate against sleeping with the guy that early, because like a lot of them will say and do whatever because they're like, I'm just going to try to escalate and speed up this process so that I can just get into her pants. Like, let's just get the show on the road. And like, that's the thing, right? I think now we're dialing back on the casual sex stuff. Like, I'm definitely seeing some pushback in like a lot of circles from women who are being like, I don't think this benefits me, but not enough. I don't think I'm seeing enough of a pushback, I still feel like I see enough people who are like, it doesn't matter, and liberation and women with their bodies and sexual revolution and all that nonsense.
Yeah. I have a newsletter from Uterish is what it's called. And I really enjoy it, and I think it's really important, and it's fantastic. However, this last week they were like, slut pride, and I was like, oh God, we still have so far to go.
No, just no.
I have nothing against sluts. That's not the point. The point is the rest of the world has everything against you, and they're lying to you when they say that they approve of it, especially if it's a man, right? Like, you see how men treat porn stars? It's a disaster. And if you're a slut, you're just a private porn star that they can mistreat and discard. So don't get it twisted.
Yeah, it's like the price of spending time with you. I mean, that's the thing, right? Like, I think that there's some value sometimes in being celibate. Like, a lot of people, it's so weird. Like, sometimes I meet these women who talk about themselves in the same way that men talk about themselves. Like, whenever I hear men being like, whoa, I haven't been laid in like 4 months, bro. I think it's like, that's sad and you're a loser. I don't care. But like, when I hear women talking like that, I'm like, to me, it's just strange because when you're celibate long enough, it's like just the mere thought of letting a man touch me and be around my presence is like, it's repulsive, like to an undeserving man. You know what I mean? Like, I cannot imagine sharing space with an undeserving man. And so for me, it's like, you need to value yourself higher in this arrangement because men will already devalue you. Your market rate is being set by people who have sinister intentions, and it's up to you to make sure that you get what you're worth, And that's the thing. We cannot convince you to have higher self-worth. If you believe that that's all you're good for, maybe this is not the podcast to be listening to. Maybe you need some self-improvement podcasts to listen to first to get your mindset on track with not seeing yourself as damaged goods, with not seeing yourself as somebody who's not worth the respect and attention of genuine, sincere interest, right?
Yes.
That's the thing, right? We can't do something for you that you are not willing to. Like, that's what I've realized with like friends as well. It's like, if you're not willing to do this for yourself, like, it doesn't matter that I tell you this guy is not treating you well and he's not good enough for you. If you don't believe it, there's just no point in me telling you. So you need to start from there first, right? So for me, it's like the first 3 months, what they do is irrelevant because I know that they're going to try every trick in the book to get what they want. And for me, it's like, well, I'm here to get what I want. You know what I mean? And what I want is sincere attention and sincere affection. And I will determine whether I feel like this person is giving that or not. And a lot of the times, usually 3 months is how long they can sustain faking it.
Right. And that's something, if you've read the handbook and if you haven't, please go back because it's like an endless treasure trove. And especially as like, you know how when you read a classic book when you're younger, you're like, oh my gosh, that book is so amazing. But then there are certain classic books I go back to every 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. Like I like to reread a book that was really impactful to me when I was younger. And I like to reread it throughout my lifetime because I find that, you know, the way I react to it is different. The way I respond to it emotionally, philosophically, etc. That changes because I have changed with time. And so this is how I feel about this 3-month rule. Like, you know, at first I didn't really understand it, but now I've seen like, you know, most human beings can't keep up pretense or artificiality for longer than 3 months. At that point, they're going to cut bait and run. They're like, okay, it's just not yielding enough like return on investment because they are looking at it from that analysis, right? But like Diana says, you know, are you getting the affection and the presence and the time, the quality of time that you require to start to feel safer, to be more vulnerable? For the first 3 months, you're basically meeting, as Dave Chappelle would say, their representative. After we get past 3 months, 3 to 6 months, where do we start to go then?
Also, this goes without saying, but never clue a man in to how long you're willing to wait before you allow him to sleep with you, because then these rules don't become applicable, right? The second you give him a deadline, you're like, well, I'd probably be comfortable to sleep with you after like 6 months of dating or something. Then he's like, okay, well, there's a deadline, so I just have to wait out that deadline and then it will work out. Never give them deadlines, like always be vague and unspecific about that. Like, I remember I had a friend who used to say, oh, I tell them when I meet them that I won't sleep with them for a year. And I was like, okay, that's very specific. And like, again, that drove away enough men to be like, 1 year? No, that's way too long for me to wait. But the thing is, I also don't think that's an effective strategy because, again, somebody who's willing to wait that long, like that's going to be much worse for you because 1 year in, the level of investment you have emotionally is way more than you would have in 3 months or 6 months. And so, again, never give them deadlines because you'll be surprised how long a man is willing to wait.
I mean, absolutely. If he knows it's going to happen, then he's like, how does it disadvantage him to simply wait it out? Like, he's got nothing better to do.
And also, like, I would not want to feel like at that 1 year mark, I'm like, oh, okay, now there's the pressure. Now I've told him, so now is the time, you know?
So I think you're absolutely right. Don't give away the timeline. And also, if you're feeling pressured to give a response, that's also something that you should be noting as a red flag. But also, all you have to say is, you know, when I feel comfortable, that's when we'll move the intimacy along. Like, but I have to feel a certain level of comfortable and comfort and safety before I can go along that path. And like, that's on you to make me feel that sort of comfort. You know, it's not on her to prove or justify. It's not on us to justify why we won't sleep with you. Do you hear how fucked up that is?
Yeah, it's messed up.
It is it's so messed up. Like, what the fuck?
I will say, sometimes with certain situations, when I know a man is not sincere, right? And like, I'm trying to out crazy his crazy. I will be like, oh my God, yeah, you know, once we get married and once we have a baby, obviously, you know, before that, we'd obviously sleep with each other. And like, I'd love to sleep with you once we get married. So like, it's so nice that like, you just knew straight up that you wanted to marry me. And like, maybe we should go to Harry Winston and pick, like, just sometimes you can out crazy their crazy. I'm just saying.
Oh my God, I love you so much. This is amazing. This is amazing.
I would not give this a solid advice that you can use this in any scenario because sometimes they can out crazy your crazy too. But I've definitely used that as a strategy when I'm definitely not wanting to go out with a guy because I'm like, maybe if I out crazy him, he'll just be like, wow, this bitch is crazy and like, leave me alone. Sometimes that works great. Sometimes it does exactly. I'm like, oh my God, I can't wait for you to be the daddy of my children. You know what I mean?
Oh my God, this is amazing. I've never heard of this. I have, but I guess I've never heard it like explained like this, and that is hilarious. But also, if you feel crazy, you're crazy, girl, run, okay? Girl, run.
That's why I'm saying you can't always use this as a strategy. Like, I would not say use this strategy. You know what I mean? I've only used it in a situation where I've correctly assessed that this guy's intention is just to hook up with me. And I'm like, how can I drive him away? Because just me saying no is not enough for him, or he's just like hanging on. And the only way to do that is to act clingier than he is. And usually that makes them sick.
Have you heard about Robert Pattinson doing this to one of his stalker fans? The actor Robert Pattinson?
Oh my God. Maybe we should call it the Pattinson method.
Let's call it the Pattinson. Because apparently he had this female fan who was a stalker who like had years and years of stalking him. And finally, like one day he went out and he was like, I'd like to take you out to dinner. And so they went out to dinner. And apparently he was just so boring and so tedious and like intentionally, of course, at this dinner, just like absolutely unbearable. And afterwards he never heard from her again. And so it's like, oh, like maybe the Pattinson is sometimes the way to go. I mean, obviously use your best bet.
Well, obviously don't go on dates with him.
Right? Use your best judgment.
Pattinson method works because he's like, what, a 6'5" tall guy. I mean, he's a wealthy, famous English dude. But I mean, I have been known to use that like on very, very, like probably once or twice in my life, where I assess that this person is just like a clingy hangers-on that just wants to sleep with me. And I'm like, maybe if I out crazy his crazy, he'll leave me alone.
Diana, you're hilarious.
Yeah. Again, like use with discretion. I would not put this in like an FDS approved method. Like I have to say certain things I've done on my own from trial and error. I wouldn't automatically be like, yes, women, use this. Like, but sometimes out crazying their crazy helps.
So we've discussed what we have to do as far as vulnerability and like understanding that you're only meeting a representative for the first 3 months and discarding any sort of like intimacy bids from him because you just don't know. But from 3 to 6 months, we want to move the needle a little bit. So how do we go about doing that?
So one of the pushback things I've heard from people within this 3 to 6 month mark is like, well, how long do I live a lie? I believe in being authentic. And like, I don't want to have to cover myself up in this way because I'm not being authentic. I'm living a lie. And like, I don't want to have to hide from my lover. He should know me intimately and all of this jazz, right? And it's like, I just want to say, no matter how much you share with each other, there will still be aspects of each other that you will never know. And you should just live with the truth that that's part of the joy of getting to know someone is that they will forever be an enigma to you in some ways. And the whole joy of getting to be in a relationship with them is spending the rest of your life finding that out. I thought that was the joy of being in a relationship with someone, like I am forever an enigma. Like I would hope that at the end of it, like, my husband would be at my funeral being like, every day for years and years and years, I had the joy of getting to unpeel these layers. She was an onion.
Like she was just an endlessly fascinating, unknowable human being. That's what I would hope at the end of my life. People are like, God, she was just fascinating.
Yeah, ogres are like onions, Women are like ogres. We have layers, and he has to peel this layer by layer each day. But that's the thing, like a lot of people are like, well, how do I be authentic? And it's like, save that authenticity for your therapist and for your loved ones, like your friends. And even with your friends, like many women know how to be discreet with their friends. Many women don't share everything with their friends. I mean, you certainly don't share that shitty ex you went back to with your close friends because they'll judge you. So why is it that you're so good at hiding shit from your friends, but like your boyfriend needs to know every last thing about what you ate, what time you took a shit, when you went to work, what you had for breakfast? Like, why does he need to know the play-by-play?
Damn, I love this call out though.
Most men don't care about that shit. So why? I think this is why I could never do like the, how you doing, sweetie messages on like, your iMessages, just like sitting and messaging people. Like, I was like, I don't care. I'm not being mean. I genuinely don't give a shit. Like, message me when there's something relevant, like you're planning something or you need to meet me for something, or if something funny happened.
Yeah, like I've never been a, hi, how are you? Hey, what's up? What are you doing? I've never been that person and I will never be that person. I don't fucking care.
I've never been a communicate for the sake of communicate kind of person. For me, the effort matters. Like, sure, I don't mind little love notes and like, you leave something for me in the morning or something, that's fine. But like, again, having a textual relationship with a person is never been my aim. And so it's just one of those things that's like, well, what is the line between authenticity and oversharing at the 3 to 6 month range? Well, this is really a time frame where this person should already be asking for exclusivity with you. Like, this should not be the time where you're still in a situationship. If you're still uncertain of where a relationship is at this benchmark, that means you don't have a relationship. Like, if you're uncertain, that means no.
Oh, and that was something too. Like, if you're the one who has to ask, what are we? It's a no.
Yeah, it's a no.
because he knows, and he knows if he wants to lock it down. And if he hasn't brought it up, it means he doesn't want to lock it down. So act accordingly.
Yeah, and again, a lot of people just get very comfortable sharing everything on their phones and being like, well, I message him every morning and stuff. And like they think that that's okay and that makes up for not having a conversation, but it doesn't, right? Like at that stage, if his intentions with you are not clear, then you should already know at this point that you're wasting your time. And honestly, getting out at the 3-month mark is much easier than getting out at the 1-year mark. Like it is much better for you to start over again with someone fresh than being in this position where you don't know for sure.
So I think if we want to look at tangible benchmarks, Diana, from 3 to 6 months, honestly, and I say this with all due respect and love, so many men are so starved for intimacy and vulnerability. At this point, I would be expecting him to be volunteering a lot more about himself.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because at this point, he should be feeling more comfortable with you. If he's still withholding, if he's still really suspicious and like acts like, you asking him what he did this last weekend because you didn't hang out, it's like, damn girl, what are you, the police? Like, okay, this is a person who is absolutely avoidant and is probably never going to get there. But I think at this point, I think from 3 to 6 months, you should be seeing who he is because it should be coming out by now.
Yeah, he should be telling you about of course, months 0 to 3, it's like weird if he starts bringing that up. But 3 to 6, it's like after he's asked for exclusivity, if like and nothing comes out, it's like if he's being too withholdy, then that's like a red flag. You know what I mean? And then as you move on from there, like from 6 months onwards, like there should be an openness. Like I think with a lot of men, it's like I evaluate their lack of openness with a lot more seriousness than I do my own. Because when I'm doing it, it's out of self-preservation because men can cause serious damage to you. It's not the same. The risks that we take being in relationships with men are not the same risks they take in being in relationships with us. Very rarely do we weaponize that kind of information against them, but men have been known to weaponize that information against us a lot. So like, even if I was in a relationship with someone for many, many years, there's a lot of stuff about my personal life, like my family history or things that I'm going through that I don't necessarily share with them. Again, people may disagree with me on that. I don't care. I don't. And I've never regretted not sharing it because when I have exited those relationships, they had nothing to use against me. And that was why I did it.
I like that you bring this up. When we say like, we're not having double standards here, we're actually using factual data. Like men have been known to use our past against us. It's often been weaponized in so many relationships. Typically women don't. I mean, I'm not saying there aren't the exceptions to the rule, but like, I don't have any friends who have had boyfriends who have had like sexual abuse in their past as a child. I've never known them to use that as a joke or a punchline or share it with your friends and like, have like a sick, twisted fantasy about it that's like an in among your group. That's not the situation. Whereas often it is the case when it's vice versa. So this fact that we're saying, listen, he needs to be becoming more transparent, more voluntary in sharing with you. You shouldn't feel like you're having to be pulling things out from him because it's on him to prove his trustworthiness, okay? Because women are known as typically being trustworthy, especially with your emotions. We are known as kin keepers. We are known as sort of the emotional stewards of the human world. And men know this, and they rely on us for that. So if you're not seeing that from him, it's a no for me, dog.
And that's the thing, it comes back to the master of stories thing, right? Like I use the blood in the water test a lot, like Dumb Fox a lot, because I'm assessing them a lot. And when I do the blood in the water test, like I'm very good at crafting a story that is completely made up. And you wouldn't know that from this podcast. You wouldn't know because it all sounds very real. And that's because the best lies are coded in some semblance of the truth. And so that's what I build off of. And I mean, I do this for a living. So for me, it's very easy to do that, right? But I try to see what exactly they use in an attempt to get under me. And usually, if a person is a decent person, they will never use that against you. In the situations where that person has been a decent person, like they have respected what I've shared with them and they've been like, you know what? Sorry that happened to you. And like, no, that's not going to be me. And, ended our relationships for much more amicable reasons and much more reasonable reasons. Like, again, your spidey sense is very strong. And I think that women need to start honing that a lot more in the situations where I felt like, I wonder if this is the kind of person that would do that. When I fed them something and like it came back to bite me in like a fight or something, that was when it clicked for me. And I was like, they used that fake shit that I gave them. They used my nose against me. And how dare they use my nose against me?
How dare your beautiful nose? How dare they try to weaponize your beautiful? But it's so true, though. I guess with vulnerability, ultimately our takeaway is if you've made it to the year and you feel like you have really come to intimately know this person, that he has been honest and forthright and shown that he is of, good character, that's when you can really start to share the things about you that have really become like the foundation for who you are today. It's at the 1 year and further on mark, because at that point, you should be very clear in knowing where your relationship is headed, if it's heading in the direction you want it to. And if not, it's time to, cut anchor and move on to the next option.
Yep, yeah. And I have to say, I have like a zero strikes policy with men. Like, there are some things that are for me hard non negotiables, like yelling in a conversation or silent treatment and things like that. Like, even in friendships where I have been yelled at or somebody has given me the silent treatment, like, this is not a situation in which I communicate to them, hey, I don't like it when you do that because XYZ and my family used to do that. And so it's like, blah, blah. They don't need to know all of that. I know I don't like it. And sometimes that's the hard line you have to have with yourself. It's like, there's no point, like, we're being told to communicate our boundaries to men and be like, you need to let him know that it's not okay to play the silent treatment thing with you. And you need to let him know that it's not okay to yell at you. And it's like, he doesn't need to be told. He's a grown adult. I think it's pretty obvious to most people that yelling and giving people the silent treatment is a very childish way of conducting any kind of conversation that requires two individuals to actually hash out problems. And at this age, and my grown fossil age, the last thing I want is to be sitting and hand-holding a man through his own emotions. You know what I mean?
Not gonna do it. Not gonna do it.
I believe my purpose in life here is to school men, but not in this domain. Okay? So this is not my struggle. Hashtag not my struggle. So I'm not going to be doing that.
Nor should you, nor should any of us. Okay, let us learn from Diana.
Peace be on you, or whatever, shalom. And I'm gone. You know what I mean? Because for me, it's like, I will show you through my action.
Diana, I want this to be a t-shirt. Shalom, or whatever.
Like, I'm full of like, whenever people are like, oh, well, he's learned his lesson and now he won't do that with you again. I'm like, no, he's learned his lesson and hopefully he won't do that with somebody else again. That's his lesson. His lesson is he lost somebody because of doing that, and he will hopefully not repeat that mistake with someone else. Is it my job to make sure that that's enforced? No. I am a chapter in his life of self-discovery and learning. And while I'm happy to have done my part, he's not like my whole book. You know what I mean? I am my own book. He's a very small chapter of it. And so for me, that's the thing, right? It comes down to what is worth communicating and where is the boundary. And authenticity is maintained, I think, when, again, if you feel like you're oversharing and you're like, I'm telling him too much, you probably are. Honor your instincts. If you feel like you're being too cagey, then you need to start writing to yourself and being like, well, what am I comfortable sharing? And am I actually being very rigid and strict? Some situations, maybe you are. But I think when it comes to personal traumas and things like that, like, those are things that most people don't need to know, let alone your boyfriend.
This is absolutely true. And I would add, instead of looking at it like as a trauma, look at it as like part of your sacred story. And the sacred is holy, and it's not meant to be profaned by the eyes of the multitude. Okay? It is something that's in an inner temple, inner sanctum, high priestess only realm. And so act according to that. Trust and honor that your past is not necessarily a trauma, but it's something that's been sacred in laying the foundation for who you are today, the wonderful, beautiful person you are, how you've persevered, how you've come to the world and managed to keep an open heart and good faith, and honor that person by not indiscriminately telling everybody your business.
Yeah. And I mean, on a final note, this is what I tell men all the time who ask me about my exes or my past and stuff. And I was like, don't ruin your future thinking about my past. You know what I mean? Don't ruin your future.
Oh my God, don't ruin your future by looking to my past. This is, Diana, you're so eminently quotable. No wonder you're a writer.
No, like, seriously.
And with that, though, I think we've really covered the 0 to 12 months. After anything else that you think should be added, like, write it in the comments. I've been reading all the comments that you leave on Spotify. It makes me so happy. But come into it with faith. But if you have something to add that we didn't think about, like, please join the conversation. Bring your own wisdom and knowledge to the table.
And as always, subscribe to our Patreon for bonus episodes. We do post them there.
We do. And to all the scrotes who are looking to traumatize and weaponize women's past traumas against them, die mad, motherfuckers.
Die mad.